Hey everyone, welcome to our first episode of Lost in Cyberia. So we got a bit excited during our first recording for this and ended up talking for 2 hours. So to break things up a little, we split this into a few separate episodes. In this first episode, we discuss how to find a mentor and what mentors and mentees can learn from each other. We hope you enjoy part one. So hello and welcome to our very first episode of Lost in Cyberia, which is very exciting. We are your hosts, Annie-Mei
And Anika.
The reason we decided to do this is because we realised a lot of everyday people don't understand why cybersecurity is important, and we saw there was a need to give that information out to everyday people.
Yes, we wanted to simplify cybersecurity because when people start looking into cybersecurity, a lot of people use a lot of jargon, and it's almost like they're gatekeeping it to themselves. And we found that a lot of people didn't know probably most basic things and the basic actions that you can take to protect yourself online. And so that's how the idea for that was born. And that's why we feel lost in Siberia, because it's such a big space and you don't even know where to start.
Exactly. So we'll firstly talk about how we met each other. We actually met through the AWSN, the Australian Women in Security Network mentoring program. Anika and I matched on the mentoring app and we started chatting, and Anika asked me to be one of her mentors. We've had fairly regular catch-ups since we met through the mentoring app. Yeah, I guess we can talk about what we've gained from the program as well, because I think a lot of people see mentoring as a one-way thing where the person who's the mentor is giving the other person a lot of information and skills and stuff. But often I think as a mentor and someone who has been mentored, it is often I'm learning as much as I feel like, well, I hope that you've learned something from me.
I always wonder as a mentee, what is the mentor gaining from that?
Yeah. And I think it's different with every person, right? Because everyone is looking to gain something different from that particular mentor, or they're wanting, either if it's like they're looking for some certain area aspect of personal development or whatever it is that they're looking for in that mentorship. Personally, from you, I've learned you have a very interesting story. You've come from a very interesting background, like your work experience, everything, which has led you to where you are now. I think I've learned a lot from you as well. Yeah, like you're a very motivated person. I find you do a lot of stuff in your spare time. I know you're obviously studying cybersecurity, so you're learning at that through tertiary means, but you do also seem very enthusiastic about cybersecurity, which I think is important because, there's a lot of people out there who, they see it purely as a job, purely as a career.
A good career move, because there is the demand, right? And it's like for someone who really likes cybersecurity, and it may be a bit weird when I say that, especially because I study criminology as well. And I'm like, I love cybercrime, but I don't love cybercrime. I just love researching it, and I love the whole area and the whole industry. And then it's a bit like sad when people get into it because they just see that it's a job that has a lot of demand. And then when you remove the passion from the job, you probably won't enjoy it as much.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I think like our energy level is matched because you do quite a lot outside of your day job, and you're quite involved in the community as well, right? And you actually do quite a lot to promote the participation and the engagement of women and other folks like in the industry. And I think like that level of energy is matching, and that's probably why it was such a good connection. So maybe the dating algorithm of AWS and mentoring app is working really well in that regard. Yeah, so that's very interesting. I think for me, like the AWS and mentoring app was, I was lost in Siberia. I was definitely lost when I first joined, when I first kind of wanted to get in the industry and started studying. I started working in a cyber adjacent job, and someone told me, just join AWSN. And I was like, oh my God, yeah, why wouldn't I? And then they had the app, and I was like, sure. And it was just so much fun, just like swiping and like learning about all these people's careers and their industries. And it's a bit different from LinkedIn, because on LinkedIn, people just say something like, I provide everyday, advice, and make companies more secure. okay, that's great, but like that doesn't tell me exactly what you're doing. And then in the mentoring app, it was very clear that they work in that particular type of cyber, which is another thing with cyber. It's not one thing. It's many different forests. It's many different areas. And I got to know people that work in different industries. So people that work in technical, people that work in GRC, people that work in, your pen testing and secure coding and threat intelligence and business, just like, and even like marketing and recruitment. That's all part of cyber as well. And it got me a bit of an idea, at least, of what do I like to do.
Yeah.
Which was the most important, right? And where do I want to go? Where do I want to put my energy into?
Yeah. So how many mentors do you have at the moment?
Oh, I don't know. I haven't counted. I think,
wow. Okay.
I think I was very eager. And one of the ladies from the app, she emailed me and she's like, just FYI, slow down a bit, and you can set a limit of mentors. And I think when I first kind of started, I didn't get a lot of matches, and because I was very new to the industry, like nobody knew what it was. And I was just saying I'm studying it and I'm working in cyber adjacent. And then I started getting more matches. And I think in the actual app, the most mentors I ever had was 15. But I think I've met with like 10 of them at least once. And I think I had probably like 5 at most where it was more frequent engagement, but not at the same time. I think I had mentors that maybe I would have like 2 that I would like meet frequently with. And then things just, temper a bit.
Yeah.
And then, or people move away, or they, have maternal leave and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And but it was even those people I caught up with them once or twice, that was still beneficial.
Okay, well that's interesting. So how did you decide to whittle down which mentors you like? If someone who's out there who might be thinking about looking for a mentor, even if it's not through a mentoring app, but maybe just people that they know through work or their boss or whatever, or someone they've worked with previously, how would you say they should go about deciding who should be their mentor or mentors?
Well, okay, so speaking about dating app metaphors, like actually go and try to meet them. If you can't meet them in person, meet them online or something like that. I tried to, first of all, take notes probably beforehand and just try to research, who they are, what they do, what kind of questions, I should ask, and then maybe have a bit of a write-up afterwards. But most important, I think, is just the vibes that need to be like right. Like if you're going to continue that engagement, you need to be comfortable with the person. You need to feel like you are safe, that you are having a good time. You're actually enjoying this interaction. And yeah, I guess also like what are you getting out of it is very important. But I think if you are a first starter, even having a friend, it can be so many different things. If we're talking about it like as a advice giver of someone that is wise and has been in the industry for a long time, yeah, that's amazing. But I feel like when you first start, you just need a friend. Like you just need someone that they can be there. And it's not necessarily like this is what you should do in this particular work situations, but it's more like, okay, they seem to be doing this and they seem to be fine. Nobody died. And I think those are the mentors that I kind of like stuck with. And it was probably a mutual kind of energy matching. And I guess we both kind of got that good interaction out of it. And we actually, just enjoyed, talking about cyber together.
I think also me looking for mentors as well, I've strategically looked for people that I wanted to be a mentor for me. I've usually contacted people personally and asked them myself, would you be my mentor? Just because they've been people that I've already thought of that I could see as someone that I either look up to or I feel like I could learn a lot from them. But yeah, it's definitely important, like what you said about having that friendship and being able to just talk about general things as well, not just, it doesn't have to be cyber related or work related, you can just talk about, whatever.
Yeah.
Because I think, if you don't feel comfortable talking about other things as well, I think, it's hard to build that relationship as well and to work together to, I guess, essentially the long-term goal is to achieve whatever it is that you're looking to get, whether that's, you want to improve your public speaking skills or you want to learn more about this particular area of cybersecurity. Like maybe you're really interested in threat intelligence, or maybe you're working in GRC, but you're looking to pivot into pen testing or something. I think for me, it's looking at people like, oh, what do they have, whether that's like personality wise or skill wise, that I feel I could learn from that person about. And for me, that's been things like someone who has started their own business. Okay, maybe that's not something I'm looking at the moment, but it might be something I'll be thinking about long term. How can that person help me learn more about how to build a business? What does that look like? Maybe they'll put me off wanting to start my own business because I'll realize it's really difficult.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's, being strategic about, and it doesn't have to, and I think like you said, you can meet up with someone a couple of times and realize that the vibes aren't there.
Yeah,
and that's okay, because you're not going to vibe with everybody, and that's okay. I think like as long as it's a mutual understanding that if you see, oh, this isn't going to go anywhere, or I feel like we're just not on the same wavelength, it's okay to look for someone else.
I don't think it's like an exclusive arrangement unless you think it is.
So I guess I want to talk a bit about your career journey. I know you didn't start in cyber, and I think it's good to share our own stories as well for other people who might be looking to either move into cybersecurity or looking to pivot from a different career, finance, or, there's so many...
Fashion.
Yeah. So, can you tell us a bit about about your career journey? Like, how did you end up where you are now?
Yes, absolutely. So it's an interesting one, and it's a bit convoluted. I studied, STEM subjects in high school, and I was a big nerd. I have these like cringe moments from Facebook, like, reminding me of my old statuses of like how much I love physics, and that's literally like what I would post. That's why, I closed Facebook down. That's the main reason.
Yeah, I deleted my Facebook a long time ago too. Yeah, I still have friends that will bring up memories because like, it'll be weird though, because they'll bring up a memory that I was involved, I was there or something, but then all my comments are no longer there. So it's just this weird conversation that they're having with themselves.
It's like Reddit posts when the post is deleted.
Yeah.
And they got like, I don't know, minus 600, like, the downloads, and everyone is commenting about like, what they said.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I need to know. Yes, so I loved, mathematics and physics and computers. But then I ended up studying law back in my home country, because people are like, just go into law or medicine. There are no other industries. And I was 18 years old as well. And so I studied law, and I enjoyed some of it. Probably I enjoyed criminal law the most. But then I moved to Australia without pursuing that further. And I couldn't really afford to study, because studying in Australia as an international student, or even someone later with a permanent residence, is quite expensive. And so I had a long time to decide what I wanted to study next, about 7 years or so. And so what I did in the meantime to support myself, I literally started working in hotels because I had some prior experience. And I worked my way from a receptionist in a hotel to a supervisor and then a duty manager, and then kind of an operations manager role. And that was actually quite rewarding because I learned so much. And how I got more into the security field was I started working in Crown casinos, and it's actually very connected to security. And I think what really connected me as well was emergency procedures and incident procedures. And my mind started thinking about what would we do now if this happened. It was a very big shift in like my attitude. But also we talked about financial security. The Hilton Bridge happened around 2015. So that's probably my biggest kind of a wake-up point to how insecure systems were. And I also love to tinker with technology. So whatever, apps we had or whatever platforms we used for hotels, I would find spare time and go inside and look how I can use it even more, hack in the right way, like actually maximize the usage of it. So I've been always like very that way. It's not a new thing for me. And then COVID hit, and I had to...
And you were living in Melbourne at this point now, yeah?
Yeah, I was living in Melbourne. And I wasn't working at Crown anymore, but I was working in another hotel, which was a quarantine hotel. And I was like, pretty much an ops manager. And
so for all the returning Australians coming home from overseas,
Yes, returning Australians coming home from overseas, and they decided to use hotels as a quarantine base. So basically as a jail. And it's a big shift from hospitality to a corrections officer. That's pretty much, I'm not like, I'm not being facetious. I think pretty much we felt like that.
Yeah.
And when you're being taught customer service, you're being taught to say yes all the time, never sound negative, everything is possible. So it was a big shift. Apart from that, we had to make everything extremely secure. I actually had to rewrite all of our standard operating procedures and write new ones on how we're going to make the check-in process secure. How are we going to make sure that the guests get from the lower floor elevator to the upper floor, and then how do they get to the front desk, how many stations we are going to have, how the disease spreads. And that's what I needed to write with zero experience in public health or in security procedures or anything like that. The biggest thing was that hotels were not ready digitally for digital communication. They relied a lot on face-to-face communication and on phones. And all of our phones, because imagine you go from an occupancy of like 1 person or 2 people per room to like 5 people per room, right? So all of our phones were constantly ringing, so we couldn't use phones. We had 1 Microsoft license for the whole hotel, or so even we didn't really use Teams. We didn't use any other communication methods.
And when you say phones, are you talking about actual landlines?
Yes, landlines.
Okay.
And landlines are also not, if you think about COVID and people reusing the same, it's not good. So I had to find, and our IT person was working 1 day a week, and then he stopped working completely during COVID. So and we have no money for any of that. And the only way for my people to still have jobs is if we continue with the quarantine contract.
Yeah.
So we have to do it. There is no
Yeah,
other
otherwise
way.
your hotel would cease to operate. Yeah.
Pretty much. And so even though we had 1 Microsoft license, I made Teams kind of work between us, even though we didn't know specifically who it was, but I found other ways of procedures to work around it. I made Google Docs. We used OneNote quite a lot. And so I did quite a lot of digital research into that. And I also developed a QR code app before QR codes became mainstream.
Yeah.
Before QR codes became mainstream, and I started the whole sign-up process with the QR code. And then
sorry, what was the QR code being used for?
So the first sign-ins. So you know how
when you had to check in everywhere.
Yes.
Oh, gotcha.
So I did it 3 months before it became everywhere.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So you were ahead of the curve.
For sure, yeah. I had to put it on my resume.
How did you create the QR code?
I just Googled it. I was how can I find a way to make it safe? And then there was an application that you can create your own QR code, and I just started tinkering with that and made it from there.
Yeah, right. Okay. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I spoke to my general manager who was like, yeah, sure, whatever. I don't know what it is, but it should work. And then Alfred Health in Melbourne, they took that and ran with that.
Yeah, right.
That's what they told me anyway. So, and I had a few people that did not like that. And they're like, I'm not going to use that because all of my data will go somewhere. And I was like, no, but you're not actually putting in any of your data. It's just so, so we know that you were there at that specific time. You're not actually that's just your name. And yes, it's identifying information, but it's not your anything else, and we know that you work in this hotel. That's not, Anyway, it was a fun time. And so that we did end up keeping the contract, even though there was a lot of issues with security and, it was on and off. And then I moved to Canberra. It was very hard to move. I still have the certificate here from the Department of Justice and Corrections team that worked in our hotel when they were saying goodbye to me, and they made me a mock certificate of a release from quarantine.
Wow. Okay. Wait, so you moved in the middle of COVID.
Yeah.
So you had to get permission to move, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
To cross the border.
Yeah.
And I remember how hard it was to go anywhere because I remember, I think it was, at one point went to Rutherglen to meet up with my dad who lived in Canberra, and we got there and then he ended up having to go home early because I remember on the news they were saying that, Victoria's going to close the borders again. Anyone who's from Sydney or from New South Wales, please go home kind of stuff. And then, I kind of had to convince him to leave early because I said, if you don't leave in the next day, I don't think you're going to get home.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, it was insane. I remember we were crossing the border with a cat and dog in the car, and it's an 8-hour drive, even more if you do stops. We went past Wodonga, Kalgoorlie Wodonga, and we are in New South Wales. We made it at least to New South Wales, and nobody stopped us, nobody sent us back, even though we had papers and everything, but we were very worried that there will be some state issues, the communication wouldn't be right or something. And then when we got to Canberra, like nobody was even checking. So in Albury-Wodonga, it was massive. It was all these cars, probably on the way to Victoria.
Yeah.
And then Canberra was just like,
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, there would have been nothing in Canberra because Canberra had one lockdown up until that point, and then the second one wasn't until August of 2021 or something.
When I moved here.
Yeah, that was when I moved too. I moved, I think, 2 months before Canberra went into lockdown again. So I was so annoyed because this is the reason I left Melbourne. But yeah, anyway, moving on from COVID. So you moved to Canberra.
Yes, I moved to Canberra. I didn't work in hotels, because it was already pretty hard to work in normal hotels by that stage. So I completely, dropped that career. I was also getting my citizenship at that stage. So I started working in the Legislative Assembly. I worked in politics for a bit. I want to see how the laws are being made because it made me think a lot about the whole world changing and how it just changed so instantly for everyone. And I wanted to really see how it's being made. And so I worked in politics for, I don't know, a year and a half or so. And it was definitely very valuable. But probably most valuable thing was that they needed someone to be on their security committee from that particular political party. And I put my hand up because, I love security. And I think by that stage, I even started reading more books and kind of getting more involved in true crime podcasts. That's what I started doing. Yes, during COVID, I was listening to a lot of true crime podcasts. And I listened to the Silk Road one, and it was probably my favorite. And so I started digging more into the dark web and all of that. And so I kind of knew a lot of things around technology and security by that stage. And so when I just put my hand up, I said, I want to be on a committee, and nobody opposed me. And I went there and I told them about all of the security flaws that I thought they had, very brazenly. It was like, I don't know where I had that courage to do that. It was more around, physical security. It was about turnstiles and sign-in processes. And it's probably a lot of my experience from quarantine hotels that I brought on. But I also told them, there are digital ways that you can actually track people, and especially when it comes to politicians' safety. I thought we could definitely improve that. And people that call, and they leave messages, we could have better communication and track that so their politicians and the staff can be safer. And they actually implemented some of my recommendations, which I thought was amazing. Maybe there were some other things already going on, but they agreed with me. And we had a digital system in the end, a digital sign-in system, and they do have it now. And then I started studying because I got my citizenship. I found there was a degree in the Deakin University that did cybersecurity and criminology, and I really wanted to do that particular double because I love technology and I love security. So cybersecurity was perfect, but I also love human behavior and I love the legislation part around it. I could not just go into just the technical bit of it. I needed the context. Also, I just got a LinkedIn recruiter that just do you want to work for this tech company and do some security stuff? And I'm like, yeah, that's handy. And that I guess you just need to also put yourself out there on LinkedIn and other platforms and share your passions and share what you like. And that was very, very lucky that I had that because it gave me an opportunity to go to a technical company that works with the government and to do a role that was security related. It was related to defense security as well, which is a very important thing to have in Canberra. And I did a lot of hard work on educating myself and making it also a very robust system. And then I just annoyed a lot of people in my cyber team, in my tech company, and they're like, please teach me everything. Please, how can I help? I study cybersecurity. What can I do more? Obviously, with permission from all my managers and everything. And I did get a lot of exposure, and I did manage to started doing security assessments and security hardening, SOAs, working with Essential 8 and ISMs. I had an opportunity to work with our application security team. They gave me a license for Secure Code Warrior, which I had for 3 months or 4 months or something, which I would try to go on at least half an hour every day. And I just loved it. And I was finding, a code, because a code is a language, right? And then you're trying to visualize how it's going to execute.
And what languages were you using?
I was specifically for that one. I started with C languages. Yeah. So I was teaching myself C on the application. Because in uni, we did C++ as a first kind of introduction. Mm-hmm. And it's so funny because I didn't like C++ because they made us code a video game. and I don't play video games, so I was not interested at all. And I did actually, I coded a version of video game, but I didn't like go to like a high distinction level with it.
Yeah.
Because I just like...
As in you had to, well, you had to create a game.
Yeah,
Yeah,
which
right.
I did. Like I made a version of it, but it wasn't...
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
You're able to do that though.
It is, yeah.
Yeah. How important do you think it is to know how to code in order to work in cybersecurity?
Okay, that's a great question. It does depend what you do. So we just talked about how you can have like cybersecurity marketing or recruitment and things like that. So maybe you don't need to code much for those kind of roles. But I think even if you do, so it's a security assessments, right? And you need to figure out how companies controls, if they're actually effective, if they're doing the job that they are supposed to be doing. I think for that particular job, I think it's very important to know basics of programming. I'm not saying you need to know every single programming language, and you won't. Like, not even like the biggest developer in the world will know all the languages well.
A long time
Yes.
to learn all of them.
But it's important to understand also the difference between the languages. So for instance, you would hear maybe C++ or C#, but you probably heard something like Java and Python. That's probably been spoken a bit more because they were becoming more popular after the C boom. And so Java, for instance, is more like C language. And what's really important to know about C languages is that they are very close to compiler level. And so it takes them a bit kind of like, they're a bit quicker, but they're also way less secure. And specifically for C, it's a very memory unsafe language. And you don't need to know how to code in C, but you need to know that. So you need to know that if something is written in C, it's a potential security risk compared to a language that's specifically maybe made to be memory safe, like Golang or something like that. And for instance, Python as well, like it's way further away from the compiler. So it's a bit more memory safe. I love C language. I like that they have a structure, I like the classes. Like I love C#, that's my favorite because it's object-oriented development. And you can create objects and classes, and you can assign attributes to them. So I really like it because it's like making a Sims game or something. You have a character and you assign things to them.
Yeah.
It's more, you can kind of understand it better.
Yeah. I was a big Sims fan growing up. Love Sims.
So yeah, I think it's important to know why you need to know that. What is the implication, particular code execution? And also it's important to know the cycle of development of code.
Like the software development lifecycle.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's important to know whether, for instance, for that particular thing, like if you're doing a security assessment, like their DevOps team, their SecOps team, do they have a segregation of duties that is working in the proper way? So do they have a person that codes, a person that checks the code, a person that makes sure it's secure? Do they check it before it goes to production? Do they check it in production? What kind of tools do they use? You know, both like SAST and DAST tools, like dynamically and statically, to continually check that code.
Yeah, and that's the main point of DevOps and DevSecOps is to continuously monitor.
And for someone that was completely new to the industry, that was so beneficial to work with the application security team. Well, not work with them. It was more like, you know, just literally I was meeting with them like mentors and talking to them about what they do. And then teaching myself like secure coding. And then it just made the picture complete. And you are so much better in cybersecurity as an analyst or as an assessor or an auditor when you have a complete picture of how things are supposed to be working to be secure. And if you don't know, or you say something like, I do not need to know, I do not need to be technical at all, I just feel like you're missing that complete picture.
Yeah. And I think that's even people personally, like looking at their own personal cybersecurity, right? Like in their house or whatever it is. I think when you go in on the client side and you're assessing someone else's system or environment, that is usually the part that is the hardest, is identifying what is actually in the environment, what is in that system. Often there's no documentation and you have to figure out what is in the system. In legacy systems, that's a whole other thing. But what can people do in their everyday life? The first thing is to identify what in your house could be attacked, you know, because I think everyone goes, oh, okay, well, I have a laptop, I have a phone, but what about all the other devices? You know, nowadays it's so common, you'll be in someone's house and then they'll go, oh, hey, Alexa. And you're
Yes.
like, hang on a minute, wait, what? You're like, we've been talking for an hour. Suddenly you realize like the whole house is listening to you. And then they're like, oh, like turn off the lights or whatever. And you're just like, oh, okay. You've got, Google speakers in every house in your home or whatever. But, they're listening all the time.
Yes.
So, yeah, IoT devices. Is your fridge connected to the internet? Is your fish tank connected to the internet? There was that famous hack in a Las Vegas casino, like how they got hacked through their fish tank because someone hacked into the temperature device in the fish tank because it was connected to the internet. So anything that's connected to the internet is a massive threat. It can be attacked. So I think that's what, and have you changed the default password or whatever, and I think that's a massive thing.
Like the Mirai attack essentially exploited that. The Mirai botnet, and they created like the biggest DDoS attack, the denial of service, just by the fact that people do not change default settings, the default password, and it's always like admin. So anyone listening, this is your sign from this podcast and the universe to go and change your default settings and default credentials on your IoT, the Internet of Things devices like your fridge and your fish tank and
and also your pets. Do you have a cat feeder? That's, did you go to that talk at byte-sized? That guy who reverse engineered his cat feeder. That was actually really interesting. It had a camera in it as well.
It has a camera. It has
it's connected to an app on your phone. It's crazy how much of I think I don't know. It's crazy to think how. I always think sometimes I'm like, how do people still get away with crime? Because there are just cameras everywhere now. I think it's actually getting harder for people to commit crime, like just across all types of crime.
Traditional crime is going down. And I don't know whether it's because we have so many cameras, but I think this is called environmental crime prevention. Cameras, for instance, locks, alarms, all of that will prevent burglars and stuff like that. A lot of people, when they work from home, burglaries go down. So like in COVID, we would have the lowest rate of burglaries. And then people go back to work, you can see it going up. It's incredible. Statistics are just such a beautiful thing. But I think the cybercrime is going up though. That's why I really like cybercrime, not because...
Not doing it,
but like looking at it, studying it and understanding it. And
not
committing it, definitely not committing it. But I love looking at the legislation and I love looking at how it can be applied to protect people, that do get hacked. And a lot of people say that it comes from overseas, and it does. Like we have a lot of overseas threat actors and like APTs, the advanced persistent threats. So it's like nation states that continuously want to get your data so they can sell it on the dark web and make a lot of money.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Lost in Cyberia.
We'll catch you next time.
Bye.